AP. Okay, I started to make like a video with the DOC camera of me like doodling all of this down. And I think I'll do that towards the end of this video. But at first, I think it's going to be the most helpful for me to go through some of this with you so you can see the examples straight away. Okay, so I'm in this notation of four-part harmony section of the chapter. And I think it's going to be kind of important to highlight what you really need to know and what you so don't. Okay, so first of all, what we're talking about, these are really Johann Sebastian Bach's rules for part writing. Music theorists for, decades and hundreds of years have analyzed all of Bach's music and found that there are these similarities that really are the reason that his music has stood out and stood the test of time for over 400 years, where there's a ton of hacks from that time period that we've never ever heard of, because he was the guy. So at least in that little spot in the world, he was the guy. So really what we're doing right here is we're trying to figure out how to write a four-part texture. So bass, tenor, soprano, and alto, or SATB, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, is what it's often called, SATB setting. That's easy to sing and kind of stays within a nice range. Now, when we were doing some of the questions in the inquisitive, there are questions about what's a good tenor range? What's a good alto range? You really don't need to concern yourself with that. Don't worry. If you find yourself writing a lot of ledger lines, either on top or on the bottom, you're probably causing yourself a little bit of a problem somewhere along the line in another rule I'm going to mention to you in a minute. But for now, like as long as you stay within 2 or 3 ledger lines for the tenor and like just staying within the staff on the treble clef, maybe a little bit below, like you can go on the inside of the staffs, don't go on the outsides. Like don't go too far down here, don't go up here. And you're safe and good to go. But again, you're going to find yourself doing that regardless because of some other rules that are much more important that I'm going to make you follow. Okay, this little bit right here that says spacing that allows the voices to blend well. Okay, the spacing thing is going to be like something we're going to talk about. Independent melodic lines, and appropriate chord doublings. Again, a couple of rules to follow and you're set. All right, now I think we've all gotten this already. Soprano stems up, alto stems down, tenor stems up, bass stems down, okay? They can't be crossing. As we joked at the last test when I accidentally put a couple of the bass notes stems up. So hopefully we've covered that one already, but that is what this key concept is about right here. All right, it also just gives you a quick thing like how to double the notes. So like just keep the same note there if it has a stem and put them up that way. However, if it's a whole note and it doesn't have a stem at all, then you just put two right next to each other. When they're all separate, then it's nice and goes like that. Okay, here's the range thing. Again, don't worry about it right now. All right, spacing. The thing to remember is this little bit. The part chords sound best if the interval between adjacent pairs of upper voice parts are an octave or less. Okay, that's really wordy. Okay. There needs to be less than an octave between adjacent upper voices, okay? The upper voices are anything that's not the bass, soprano, alto, tenor, okay? So adjacent are the one next to each other. So you cannot have larger than an octave between the soprano and the alto. You cannot have larger than an octave between the alto and the tenor. That one can be a little difficult to see because they're on 2 different staves most of the time. So you have to be careful and remember way back to when we were thinking about like, this is C4, this is C3. Like you have to make sure that you're not spreading yourself too far between the alto and the tenor. There can be more than an octave between the tenor and the bass. That's not an upper voice, and it's just adjacent upper voices. Again, to clarify, these are the ones right next to each other. So tenor and soprano, likely often, and it's fine if there's more than an octave between those 2 voices, just not between the ones that are right next to each other. Okay. The other thing that we want to do is cross voices, okay? Think of everybody in their own car lane. Like they have to stay in their lane. At no point is the tenor voice allowed to swoop into the alto's lane and then go back. Like they're not allowed to switch lanes. None of that. They got to, if the alto's going to go low, the tenor better go low too. There's no crossing. None of that. Okay? And the crossing can happen at the same time or from one chord to the next chord. Now, it uses two different things. For me, honestly, I never remember which one is which, if it's overlapping or crossing, or just don't do either one. I don't care what they're called. And to be honest, neither does the AP test. Just don't do them. Okay, so let's see a couple of their examples of good spacing and poor spacing. It's just so much in there. It doesn't sound like super bad. It's not, I mean, horrible, but it's definitely not as like smooth and easier to do. Now, if you also think of it as an individual person, look at this alto part. G, C, C, E. Like that's a leap of a tenth. That's crazy pants. Like that would be so difficult to sing. And this, all these like leaps in a row, woo, my goodness gracious. Just much more difficult to sing. We're not talking about a pianist, two hands. We're talking about like doing it this way. Okay, so just to look at this one clearly, if you understand, you can fast forward through this part of the video. But so these right here, this one right here, this is the more than an octave between adjacent upper voices. This one's really easy to see. So the C to the E, C to C would be an octave. So C to E is more than an octave. So that is a spacing error. Okay, and that's what I would call that, a spacing error. I don't call it cross voices. I don't care about overlapping voices. Again, I don't care. It's a spacing error. And then here, this is the one that is hidden, okay? That it's more difficult to see. So there's an E here and a G here. Well, an octave above this E would be this E right here at the bottom of the staff. So this E to that G, that's more than an octave. Again, it's giving you back in the good example that it's really fine. It's fine to have a larger than an octave space between the bass and the tenor. Having the bass pop down is always going to sound nice. Bass lower, 2 thumbs up. But you want to keep those upper voices together. Sorry for my crazy lighting tonight. Okay, but yeah, these are the ones you kind of want to watch out for is the spacing error in the upper voices. Okay, crossed voices, again, I'm just going to call this a spacing error. You can see that you have a tenor note higher than the alto note. Okay, now you have to remember that this C would be the same as this C right here. So this is actually E4. So E4 would be this one right here. And so that's crossed voices. Okay. Upper voices out of range and an extremely high limit. Well, while that's true, you also have spacing errors, which cause this problem. Like this G to that E is more than an octave. If you would have kept that E lower, then you would have therefore kept the soprano note lower and you wouldn't have had a problem with the extreme range of the voices. Like if you solve the spacing errors, you don't have to worry about range, okay? And again, you start writing yourself ledger lines for the soprano voice. No, nobody's going to thank you for that. So that's just kind of another additional thing to keep in mind. Okay, I'm going to go down to this overlapping voices part just so that you kind of see the comparison and why I don't differentiate too much. We just have to know that there's multiple ways that you are not allowed to do this. Okay, so you've got the voice crossing here. This F is higher than that D. Okay, if I were to put it up here on the treble staff, it'd be this one right here. So that's not okay. They can occupy the same note, by the way. So it's really fine if you have a D here and this D there. That's fine. That's not crossed. If they can occupy the same pitch, that's okay. They just have to part ways at the next one without crossing. Overlapping voices are when you have essentially the voice crossing, but in adjacent horizontal chords. So you have an E here, which is higher than this D right there. And so you've actually, this is like the lane change thing that like the tenor went into the alto lane and then went back out of it. You're not allowed to do that. Even when it's 1-to-1. So you do have to watch out for the notes that are right next to each other. I will say that there are some theory textbooks and some theory guidance that says at no point in an entire line of chords is the tenor line or the alto line allowed to cross into another person's lane, or another kind of note lane. I do not follow that type of strict guidance, and neither does the AP exam. So as long as it's not in adjacent chords, again, this overlapping, so one chord to the next chord, then you're okay. If you have an E here and then a D here, but this one didn't go to a D until the next voice, like it it's really okay as long as it's not one chord to the next chord. We might have to do an example of that in class so you can see what I mean, but that's some pretty strict theory guidance if you read that in any other online book or something. Okay, so in kind of the try it here, this one's kind of really good to do. Let me hide the answers here. But again, this one right here, this is the one that I don't want you to worry about. Okay. And really, these two are the same one. This is just the spacing between adjacent upper voices. This says the spacing between the soprano and the alto, and this is the spacing between the alto and the tenor. You don't have an option for soprano and tenor because those aren't adjacent, not right next to each other. And then voice crossing is just when, you know, the one is right above it. So this is a good little exercise to do. So you can check that out. All right. The next thing that I want you to check out is doubling. There's a lot of gobbledygook here. So let's trim this down to something that is manageable. Okay. Go ahead and for this first rule, it says never double a note with an accidental or a tendency tone, scale, degree, or chord member that must be resolved, such as the leading tone. Let's just make that way simpler. Don't double the leading tone. Don't worry about any other tendency note. There's only one other one that we're going to deal with, and we're not going to deal with it for a little bit, so hold tight. And it has its own separate rule. So really, the only tendency tone that you have to worry about at all is the leading tone. Scale degree 7, raise it in a minor key, or regular in a major key. Don't double it. No doubling of the leading tone. Now you're going to write in a little circle next to all your little part writing guys the leading tone. So you're going to remember, oh yeah, that's that note. I got to raise it in a minor key, but I'm not allowed to double it. No doubling the leading tone. Verboten. Okay. The next couple are when you have different inversions of chords. Okay. Now these are just triads. When you have a 7th chord, you put all 4 voices in. End of story. Put all 4 voices in. So we're talking about triads here. When you're root position, do the root. Cool. When you're in 2nd inversion, or when the 5th is in the bass, double the bass note. Okay. So in both root position and 2nd inversion, you're essentially going to double the bass note. The root here and the 5th here. So whatever you put as the bass note of the chord, double it. Good. 1st inversion, double whatever you want. Cool. Done. Those are all, that's all you need to know. Okay. In root position and 2nd inversion, double the note you put in the bass. It's the root here, it's the 5th here. For 1st inversion, double whatever works. How am I going to know which one to do? Again, we're going to have a few more part writing rules that might help you figure out which one to do. All right. The diminished. I think my computer got funny. The diminished thing. Okay. Hey, look, double the bass. Wow. Now, diminished chords, as it says, which often appear in 1st inversion. You're going to see a lot of 7 diminished 6. Roman numeral 7 diminished 6. 2 diminished 6 in a minor key. You're going to see lots of those. They're almost always in that, because if you put them in root position, like if you put the 7 chord in root position, well, then the leading tone is in the bass. And what did I tell you whenever you're in root position to double? The bass. Did I tell you to not double the leading tone? Like, you see how we're like talking ourselves in like, but you said I could, but, yeah. So you're not going to see the leading tone chord or the 7 diminished chord, which is your most common diminished chord. You're not going to see it in root position because I don't want you to double the bass, because it's a tendency tone and it wants to go to the tonic, and you can't have 2 notes going to the same 2 notes because that's a parallel octave. And that is another rule that we're going to get to. So you almost always see diminished chords in 1st inversion. So while this falls under the 1st inversion thing, it also just needs to double the bass. So for first inversion chords that aren't diminished, you can double whatever you want. For root position chords, second inversion chords, and diminished chords that happen in first inversion, or just diminished chords, double the bass note. Okay? Again, keep in mind that we don't double the leading tone, but that should help. All right. Those should be most of the happy rules that you need to kind of like keep in your brain when we do some practicing in class on Wednesday. Okay? A good thing to do, just to like take a look at some of these summary things, or like go and like do the show answers, test out a couple of things in this text. Do that. I would hate for you to get frustrated doing the inquisitive, just because we really need to not care about like the vocal ranges. Like we just don't need to know that. So if you choose to do the inquisitive, great, you're going to get some good feedback, but just don't get frustrated with questions that I have told you don't matter, because they don't. Trust me. Okay. Thanks, guys. See you later.